Today we are starting Section K-4. In the preliminaries, it says to teach the A-E-I-O-U page, which is page on the Blackburn Log B2. We've already done that in a lesson, so if you haven't done that, go ahead and pause and do that. And then go ahead and open up to a new spelling section. And at the top, you're going to write K-4. One of the notes she puts at the top here was interesting. It says, Shakespeare once said, "Though this be madness, yet there is method in it. So too we find the English language. While we marvel at the general regularity of most words using our system, occasionally we find a few unexpected twists. We have two common words in today's list that sound like sound like this one, but are spelled with our first sound, I don't know why. If you find out, please let her know. We learn these words by saying think to spell, and then we say. So a couple times today, you're going to think to spell something different than what we say in just normal conversation. And I want to go over an example really quickly for one more thing that we have a little, it's not an exception. It does follow the rules, but it's different in our brain. So typically, when we say this word, in most English places, how do we say it?
Bad.
Baby, right? We usually say this with like a long E sound. If I lived in the South, I might say, pick up that baby and bring her to me, right? Pick up the baby. How about the word, oh, my brain. I had another example. How about this word? How do we typically say that word?
Family.
We usually say family, right?
No,
But if I had a little southern accent, I might say, call the family. Let them know we're having a get together, right? So in this program, we're thinking this phonogram as ya when it's a consonant, right? I and I. Now, I'm sorry. Yeah, I, it and I. When I change baby, pick up the baby, and when I pick up multiple of these things, how do I spell that when there's more than one? Right? I-E-S. So we say that Y is a stand-in. It's a stand-in for I because English words don't end in I. So that's why we're ending a lot of these with the Y, because English words don't end in it. And we can remember that I and Y usually say I at the end of a syllable. Okay? So you're thinking of these in like a southern accent. How would I make this? Call the families. I'm going to drop the Y and I'm going to add I, right? Because if English words could end in I, it would probably just be spelled with an I, right? So our Y is a stand-in. So we have words today that end in Y, but we're going to think I to help ourselves remember them. So our first word, when you hear this word, it may throw you off on how to spell it because you hear the word any. Did you pick up any bananas at the store? But it's not spelled I-N-I. It's not spelled E-N-I. So we're going to think to spell an-I. Did you pick up any bananas at the store today? An-I. That's our first word, okay? Be never proud by any means. Build not your house too high, says the New England Primer. So we're going to think to spell an instead of n or in. And we're going to think I, like baby. Okay? An-I. First syllable, an, I think it together, even though it's not one of our phonograms. And then I. But English words don't end in I, right? So we've got a stand-in. with me. And, first syllable, and, second syllable, Say it as you write it. Okay, sound it out for me. And put a little space for the syllable. It's 2 syllables, right? Does yours look like mine?
Yep.
We are going to put an X over the "an" because it is an exception. If you want to. You could sound it out and you could say e, Annie, right? Or you could say "an" as like an exception to the rule.
Annie.
We think or we speak quickly, any, but we think to spell "an", "I". Right. Okay, and for cursive practice, remember we have our clock letters, our loop letters, our uphills, and our bumps, working on our brain integration. So if A is a clock letter, stop at 2 o'clock, come back around and connect, straight to baseline and tail. N, you can do a bump letter, but I'm going to do it as an uphill to midline, straight down to baseline, bump at midline, and a tail. Y is an uphill letter, uphill to midline, bump at baseline, up to midline, and a big loop under the line. Did you pick up any bread?
Bread?
I was wondering.
Is that what
Okay, but as Minnesotans, we probably say any, because we're kind of blah. Okay, the next word then, since you know how to spell ane, is mene. Think to spell "an" in the rhythm of speech, say "n". Okay, so same kind of thing. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for lack of wisdom. Proverbs 10:21. So we've got ane, and now we got many. I didn't have any bread, and then I went to the neighbor, and she gave me many bread. Oh, so sweet. Okay, so we're thinking "an" and we're thinking "I". Ready? Man, I. First syllable man, an, or if you want to sound it out. Second syllable I. I. Here we go. Man, I. First syllable man, an, or either. And second syllable I. I. Whisper as you write, please. Sound it out for me. Does yours look like mine?
Yep.
Any red markings?
Yes.
If you're doing this as an, I, you can put the X on top. It's an exception. If you're doing it as e.
Many.
And then what else can we do?
It's not many.
Let's bracket these two.
It's
Yeah, it's kind of, and you're saying it more together. You're not necessarily going ma'anny, right? It's like many. I picked up many pieces of bread from the floor. Because what I talked about at the beginning is Y is a stand-in for I, right? So we talked about babies and families. If you say many, it's going to throw you off and you're going to think it ends in E. But what's the word M-A-N-E? Maine. Well, maybe it needs I-E, right? So if you think of it in a southern accent, many, Annie, baby, family, you would get that English words don't end in I, and you get I as a stand-in says I. Okay, it just kind of helps. In typical speech, you're going to say mini. Pick me up mini cupcakes or whatever. But just helping to spell. The next word is only. Only. The only objection in the Bible is a bad life. Only. Okay, so we're thinking only is one, right? That's our root word. And remember that, O may say O before 2 consonants. I and O may say I and O before two consonants like bind or gold. So even though we're breaking up syllables, we are still having two consonants. Okay? So ready? Only. First syllable own, O, second syllable li, l, I. Do it with me? Only. First syllable own, second syllable li, l, I. You really have to have a southern accent. Oh, I didn't do that one. I'll come back to it. You're my one and only. Out of many. But out of many, I don't choose any. I choose my one only. Sound it out for me? O, l, I. Remember, this root word is one. That's why we're not doing O-W-N. And O can say O in front of two consonants. So that's why it makes sense. Y is a stand-in for I. Some of these you might, if you're not picking up the rules, it's okay. You might just need to memorize a couple of these. Okay, many. We're going to write it uphill for your M. It could be a bump, but we're going to do it uphill. Uphill to midline, back to baseline, bump at midline, back to baseline, bump at midline, and tail. A is a clock letter, stop at 2 o'clock, come back around and connect, back to baseline. N is an uphill to midline, straight down to baseline, bump at midline and tail. Y is an uphill to up midline, bump at baseline, up to midline, and loop under the line. Now let's spell only. Only. You're my only one. Okay, look at this A that you did. That's nice. An O does not come down to baseline. Okay, so we're going to stop at 2 o'clock, come back around and connect, and a ponytail. For your N, you're already up there, so you're just going to go straight to baseline, bump at midline, and a tail. L is a tall loop letter, back to baseline. Y is an uphill to midline, bump at baseline, up to midline, and loop under the line. Anyone but you are my only one. You are one of many, but you're mine. Wish you could see all that behind the camera. Okay, the next one is these. Whoever hears and obeys these sayings is a wise man. These. Okay? Here we go. These. Z, E, Z. It's hard to do together. Okay, do it with me. These. Z, E, Z. So we've got 1 2-syllable, a vowel, a consonant, and a silent vowel.
Silent vowel? You have a silent vowel? Where?
We are using the second sound in some of these. See if you get it right. Whisper as you write it, please. These is not spelled the same as please. Okay, sound it up for me. Z, E, Z. Does yours look like mine? Did you use a Z here?
Nope.
This is the second sound of that, right? Because this can say S and Z, like as an as. What red markings? We're going to underline. Am I saying fees? Nope, I'm saying and that's the second sound. So put a 2 above the We've got a long E. We'll get to it in a minute. We've got a S. So underline this Z and put a 2 above it. And then the silent E, underlined twice. Why do we have a long E here? Did the vowel sound change because of the E? Remember all of our silent E reasons? Yes. Yes, it did. So put an arc between them. That's a lot of red markings in that one. The thing about English, that's a lot of red markings, but the nice thing about this program is that you're learning the reason why, right? You used to just have to memorize this. Now you know z, z, and the vowel sound changes because of the E. So you could figure that out because you're learning these rules. Let's do some cursive. T is an uphill, all the way to the top, all the way to baseline. H is a loop letter, loop to the top, straight down, bump at baseline, bump at midline, back to baseline, and a little tail. E is a small loop letter. S, just for a reminder, since we just are starting this off in this lesson, remember it's kind of pointy with a little dress on there. So it goes up to midline at a point, scoops around to about 8 o'clock and swings back out, and then E is a little loop letter. Back to baseline, pick up your pencil and cross your T. These are only one of many. Oh, please stop barking. Okay. Next one is open. There is more power in the open hand than in the clenched fist, said the Hardware News. What do you think that means? There's more power in the open hand than the clenched fist. I'm going to fight for what's mine, or I'm going to be willing to give.
No. I'm going to fight with your hands open.
You have a lot of power when you are in a position to give, and you're giving. It's not good to just give the little bits. And remember, we have another rule. A-E-O-U, usually say A-E-O-U at the end of a syllable. Okay, here we go. O, pen. First syllable, O, O. Second syllable, pen. O, pen. First syllable, O, O. Second syllable, pen. Say it as you write it. Whisper so you don't bother your neighbor. Okay, sound it out for me. O. Uh-huh. Any red markings?
Yes. Yes.
O can say O at the end of a syllable.
What?
For cursive,
It's not the end of the syllable, is it?
stop at 2 o'clock for your O, come back around, and a ponytail.
How's the end of the syllable?
Your P is kind of an uphill, a little bit of a loop if you want to, and a clock letter, so it's kind of a fun one. So you're already halfway up the hill to midline, so kind of just loop up to midline, and then you can go straight onto the line and follow it straight back up. I do a little loop just because it's a little fun for me. And then I'm entering the clock at midline. Stop at 9 o'clock and swing back out for your P. E is a little loop, up to midline, back to baseline. And N you can do as a bump letter. I'm doing mine as an uphill. So uphill to midline, straight down, bump at midline, and a tail. Open. One of the things we're going to do today at the bottom of your paper is we're going to draw and label the words. So pick one of these before I erase them.
That one. I picked that one.
And draw it down in the bottom of your book there. Excuse me. On the bottom of the paper it says sentences or bonus spelling words. We've got 5 so far. Any, many, only, these, and open. Pick one and draw it at the bottom.
Huh?
For example, you can't use my example.
That's what I was going to do.
That's many. That's only. Right?
Well, so you need all the words that we can use.
You can try to think of something different. Why do we do these silly things, some people ask? Because when you have to look at a word and figure out how it's used, that uses a different part of your brain. And if you use a different part of your brain, you're cementing that into your brain in a different way.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So your creative part and your analytical part are coming together in one. The next word, a lot of times we say city, but remember we're going to try that Y stands in for I, city. This is my favorite city. It's so pretty. Okay? And remember, C can say S because of Y. Because of how come? C says S before E, I, and Y, right? So, city. Sit. First syllable, sit. Sit. Second syllable, Say it with me. Sit. First syllable, sit. It. Second syllable, Say it as you write it.
After open. Right?
We are on the sixth word. Any, many, only these open. City. Sound out for me. Now you're like thinking to yourself, I said it twice. That doesn't make sense. But this one can say I. And this one can say I. And remember, if I'm going to change this word to more than one, right? I live in the city of Oklahoma City. Let's change that. I live in the city of Denver. I could say there are many cities, right, around Denver. I would change it to what? I-E-S. So the Y is a stand-in for this I because English words do not end in I. Where's my rule? There we go. English words don't end in I. So I can't just go C-I-T-I, right? I've got to have that Y as a stand-in. And then Y can C say S in front of an E, I, or Y. So you're not having to write cities down. I'm just showing you an example. Are there any red markings?
Yes.
What are my red markings?
I don't know.
No red markings.
I love that.
This, oh. Okay, so this one typically says K as its first sound, right? But because of the I, it's going to say, so we don't need to always mark the rules. And then first syllable, or first sound, first sound, and then first sound, right? As a vowel, it's So for our cursive, C is a clock letter. Stop at 2 o'clock, come back around to baseline. Can you see that my pen